Productive Disruption is a podcast presented by Rhodes Branding, spotlighting bold and innovative ideas that have the ability to reshape K-12 education. If you're looking for actionable ideas about how to operate and innovate your school, you've come to the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Productive Disruption. My name is Dan Wire. I'm the VP of Ops here at Rhodes Branding. We are super excited for today's guest. Today we have Dan Whisler. Dan is the Educator in Residence for Trane Technologies. Dan, welcome to Productive Disruption.
Good morning, Dan. Thank you for the invitation to join you.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you. So I guess just to start, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do as the Educator in Residence at Trane?
Sure, glad to. This is my fourth year serving as educator in residence. My role, I literally describe as being a bridge between industry and the classroom. Previously, high school science teacher for 33 years, have been very involved in energy education for about the last 12 to 15 years. So my role working with teachers, again, is now to be an industry support, help create more career awareness, and help students realize the opportunities that are out there.
That's awesome. So, given your 30 plus years background as an educator, I'm sure you have an opinion on sort of the cross section between private sector business and K-12 education. I guess how would you encourage other companies like Trane to get involved in schools like you have in this role?
Having business and industry involved in the classroom, it's a win-win for everybody involved. In the area, again, teaching environmental science, we used energy as a theme for project-based learning. With energy or technology, by the time it's in a textbook, it's old news. So having business and industry involved in the classroom, it really helps teachers make sure the content is relevant and make the connections to the career opportunities that are out there.
So I'm curious then, what do you think there's been a hurdle with K-12 education embracing that intersectionality between private sector business and education? Like, what do you think there's been resistance there historically for some reason?
Yeah, schools have tended to operate as kind of very separate, and it is. The education world is different than the business world. There's no doubt about that. But there needs to be a partnership, and again, understanding, making connections, especially when we look at the career opportunities that are out there today. Uh, it used to be when I was in high school, it was just automatically assumed you needed to go on to college in order to find a successful career. Well, today, only about a third of the careers that are out there actually begin with a four-year degree. But it does there's another third that requires some specialized training. So we definitely need to have, again, a partnership emerging so that the students see K-12 and post-secondary, the pathways that are out there for the careers.
This partnership that you're involved with at Trane, just doing some preliminary research seems hugely beneficial to this group of young kids coming up. And can you switching gears, can you talk a little bit about this initiative? I know the company launched a STEM program called the BTU Crew. Can you maybe tell us a little bit about that and what it's all about?
Correct. The BTU crew is designed, again, using energy as a theme for project-based learning. We take energy for granted. We just expect to flip a light switch and have the lights come on. But with the BTU crew, what we're able to do is actually students begin to see their own building. We can turn it into a living learning lab. And instead of a textbook and a case study, now we can have students look at their own building, the energy use in the building. We can correlate it with the district calendar. And it's not that it's a bad thing to use energy. We just want to make sure we're only using it when we really need to use it. So we look at the career opportunities today. We hear a lot about renewable energy, sustainability. Now we're introducing data analytics and how we can optimize energy use. So it really brings learning to life for the students.
I'm curious, do you know the origin story of the BTU Crew? How did this initiative launch initially? Like, who came up with the idea and
It
what's the
actually
background?
started a little over 10 years ago. It actually grew out of the idea as a Girl Scout badge as it relates to energy. And it grew from there into the program to where we now have two different levels. There's a grades 4 through 7, about 20 different lessons, and then 8 through 12, more specifically grades 8 through 10, there's 32 lessons. Energy is already a unit in a number of different science classes, energy transformation. So as we work with districts, I like to visit with teachers and say, okay, what are you currently doing to teach energy? And then as an industry partner, how can we help support your efforts?
Well, you mentioned project-based learning. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, some of the projects that students, actually take part in the classroom with the BTU crew?
With project based learning, one of the things I like about it is it really brings an interdisciplinary approach. It's no longer, you aren't just teaching silos where you do math and English, and you do science when you get to science class. Now students actually begin using all of those subject areas. Uh, Again, you study energy, students hit all of those areas. It's math, it's science, it's economics, it's politics. And then when you take the focus off of taking a test, if we aren't just learning something because there's a test next Friday, but with a project, if we can find opportunities for them to share what they're learning, maybe that's with high school students sharing with middle school or an elementary class. Maybe it's giving a presentation to a local community group. That's where the ownership for the learning really comes in and the engagement levels go way up. Again, if the focus isn't just on a test score.
That's awesome. And I think what's cool about this is, like you said earlier, you're not necessarily tied to a textbook, which might be outdated after a few years. I mean, I remember I felt like some of my textbooks
Exactly.
growing up in high school were, I mean, outdated by many years. But so I think that's a really cool component of this. It allows you to be adaptable to, to what's happening in the world today.
Very much
So
so.
yeah, I guess how this area in particular with STEM, it's changing every day. So I guess going back to that adaptability, how do you make sure that what you're teaching and involved with BTU crew and other initiatives is up to date?
Again, that's the connection between education and business and industry, working with the State Department of Education, the Career and Tech Ed, working with technical colleges, identifying what are the specific skills. In the information age, it takes 5 or 10 seconds to look up a detail. But one of the important things is what can students do with that information after they have it? So making the connection, seeing the big picture, I think that's one of the important areas. As you mentioned with textbooks, one of the nice things now is with technology, there's so much information available. We can actually take from a building standpoint what used to be 1 meter reading a month. And your energy use was simply represented by one number over 29 or 30 or 31 days. And now we can have 15-minute interval classroom. And that's where it's almost like having again, we talk about a living learning lab. It's an interactive textbook, and learning really comes to life because when students pull up that data, now that it has meaning, it's their building. They can see what's happening.
You mentioned earlier this program has been around for about 10 years now. I guess can you tell me a little bit? How many schools did you initially start with for this
We
initiative, and how
had
many
four
do you have
schools
now?
in Kansas. We piloted the program in Kansas. I started working with four different schools, and we've had several schools that have really taken the program and run with it. There isn't a one size fits all. Schools are different. The background of the teachers in the classroom is different, and I very much like it to be it's the project. uh, I come alongside and work with the teachers, but ultimately it's the students, it's their project, and it's the teachers working with and facilitating the learning. That's one of the things I really like about the program. And I saw that change happening even when I was in the classroom. In the information age, it's so easy for students to look up the information. They didn't necessarily need me standing at the front of the room delivering content. But if I can work with them and help facilitate their learning, help them make connections that maybe they hadn't thought about, and see the big picture. And that's what we try to do as we work with schools.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about what it's like when a new school comes on board and wants to take part in this initiative. How how does one get started with this?
One of the first things, if schools are looking at, for example, we've had a lot of funding increases with ESSER and the concerns about COVID, indoor air quality. Now we're able to take a look at what would have just been previously maybe a facilities project. And now we can create some additional educational value as a part of that. So then I like to sit down and visit with principals, teachers, coordinators, counselors, and find out what's currently being taught. First of all, again, uh, we don't necessarily, curriculum is local. And depending on the size of the school, they may be able to offer different science classes, for example. So I like to learn more about what's currently being taught in the schools. Where does energy fit in? Do some teachers have experience with project-based learning? And then what are the goals? What's the vision? And how can we take this opportunity and take where we are today and move forward again, engaging students as part of the interactive learning, to go from where we are to maybe it's a STEM competition. Uh, Again, taking the focus off of a test, what can we do to really engage the students? So it's ultimately, again, it's the district goals. It's not my goals. I'm not here to, I wouldn't want somebody to come in my classroom and say, here's what you need to do. So I'm very careful as I work with teachers as an industry partner now to say, okay, what can I help you do?
That makes perfect sense. So I guess, the area of STEM is something that's, it seems to be growing, year after year in K-12 education. As you think about that growth and this program, where do you see this program going maybe over the next, 5, 10 years?
It's definitely more of an interdisciplinary approach. In fact, NSTA, the National Science Teachers Association, 2 years ago came out with a new position statement on STEM education, and it stressed an interdisciplinary approach. It stressed experiential learning. I look back to my years in teaching, and I can honestly say students didn't necessarily like studying science, but they love doing science. And if we look at science as a verb, it's action. If we get the students involved to where they're really engaged in what they're learning, sometimes the lesson comes after the fact. And then if we can make the connections of what they're learning to application in the real world, whether that's in their homes, in their careers, businesses, and that's part of the STEM position statement from NSTA, is really making sure we highlight, create the awareness and the chance to explore those career opportunities.
Very cool. I'm curious, at what age do students first get involved with this type of program? What grade,
The
rather?
program we have at the BTU Crew is grades 4 through 12. In Kansas, we're going through a school redesign effort, and it's definitely there's a work-based learning continuum that goes all the way down to upper elementary, where we want to begin creating more awareness in our students. The chance to explore in upper elementary and middle school some of those career pathways, and then in high school, the chance to have some more specific training. Uh, We've done a great, and I say we, education has done a great job over the years for students that are headed, they're college bound, and we have some dual credit opportunities for students. Well, now we're seeing more of that in the area of CTE, where we can have some specific skill sets, some training and competencies that are earned in high school that actually are career accelerators and for students that might be going into the trades. And those are much needed careers, great career opportunities for the students.
I'm curious. Do you have examples of students who have taken part in this BTU Crew initiative that have, maybe gone on to internships or careers, because of this?
One of the schools I was working with in Western Kansas, there's only about 100 students in the high school, so very small school, but became interested in energy use. They weren't close enough to a technical college, so it wasn't like they could be at the high school half time and then over at the technical college half time. But when they found out, for example, our building automation system certification, as a full-time student, they could complete that program in 11 months. So you start looking again, and we can't train students, that BAS certification. We can't train students fast enough for the need that's out there. And when they realize that in less than a year they could be fully certified and moving into a career, that student chose to go to one of our technical colleges here in Kansas and pursue that certification. And I like that. It does go back to that again, creating the awareness and exploration, really making that a part of the classroom discussion.
So it seems like there are many educators struggling right now how to improve STEM literacy and encouraging more students to pursue careers in STEM fields. I guess what would your pitch be to educators in both rural, suburban, big metro areas, to implement a program like this at their school or their school district?
A couple of things I'd highlight there. First of all, I applaud all teachers. It's been one, having been in the classroom myself, teaching is challenging even in normal years. And then you add all the challenges that COVID has created the last couple of years. I appreciate all the efforts everybody's doing in the classroom. As we move forward, one of the first things I'd say is start small. Uh, Identify one or two small lessons, things you can do to begin integrating, and then work with others. Don't feel like as a teacher you have to do it all by yourself. Again, going back to facilitating learning, what are the resources you have around you to help? I try to be one of those resources. I try to make connections for others. I've been fortunate to be involved in energy education for, again, 10, 12, 15 years now. I have a network of connections, resources. It's almost like putting a puzzle together. You add one piece at a time. And as you do that, there's a lot of support that's out there to help teachers in the classroom. Part of it's just identifying that support and making those initial contacts.
So while STEM specific schools obviously play a really important role in cultivating a lot of the talent you've talked about, you're seeing a lot of interest in maybe pockets of the country where STEM programs haven't historically been possible. How has both this program and Train as a whole made it a point to help you know play a part in these underserved areas that where STEM programs haven't historically been available?
Trane has taken a number of initiatives, again, working with schools, education as an industry partner, whether it's through a STEM summer camp. One of the areas we've worked to try to promote STEM careers are not just for the guys. We definitely want our young ladies to see these as career opportunities. We've done a couple of webinars that I've had teachers reach out to me and say, I don't have very many girls in our school STEM club. So we've done some webinars, and I've had some of our female engineers present to the students and say, these are great careers. Whether you're male, female, doesn't matter. These are great careers. And if you develop these competencies, our young ladies can be very, very successful in the area of STEM. So we want to help promote that. So again, as an industry partner, we try to provide those opportunities. One of the things working with NC3, it's stands for the National Coalition of Certification Center, serving on the Governor's Council. These certifications do not have a cost for students. So again, looking at equity, whether it's in a small school, a big school, across all socioeconomic backgrounds, Trane wants to reach as many of these students as possible. They're our future. And whatever we can do to help support that, we are glad to help make that happen.
Here to that, absolutely. And Train, quite honestly, has been at the forefront of sustainability initiatives for such a long time. Having gone through the rebrand a couple years ago, we saw that there was a great infographic that the company produced that highlighted its 2030 commitment to sustainability. Can you talk a little bit about how schools might be able to play a factor in that sustainability initiative?
Oh, absolutely. I look back the years I was teaching, and when the students first began to hear about recyclables, and schools or communities starting a recycling program, and the difference that can make for the environment when we can reuse materials instead of just starting over all the time. I see an opportunity like that as we create more awareness in energy and sustainability. We hear a lot at the state level, the national level, even at the global level. Okay, what's our energy future? Renewables and fossil fuels. Well, first of all, we need to understand how we're currently using all of those energy sources. And there's advantages and disadvantages to all of those. And as we have students begin to understand or have more awareness, Now we really start to look behind the scenes. Where does our energy come from? We flip the light switch and the lights come on, but how did we make that happen? And I see it from a standpoint, visiting with one of our schools. We were talking about what are some possible projects that the school could do. One of our young ladies, a student in the high school, she said, I walk into the girls' locker room in the morning. She said it may be 7:15, 7:20, and the lights are on, but nobody's in there. She said, what would it cost to put in a motion sensor so that the lights are only on when people are? Great question. And that's an example, again, of where we can go through. Students can research a project like that. What would motion sensors cost? What are the potential energy savings? What is our return on investment? How long would it take to pay for that? And that's where the students become engaged. So much like many students, schools started going through and creating a recycling program. I see the opportunity to use energy awareness in a building. Again, it's not a bad thing that we use energy. We just want to make sure we're using it in a way that optimizes the energy use. And then we can take those savings and pass those along to other programs in our schools.
Absolutely. One of the things we focus on as an agency is generational differences. As far young as Gen Z, and all the way up to the baby boomers. Being given your background as a teacher, over 30 years in the classroom. Can you talk a little bit about, have you seen a noticeable difference in the way students maybe 30 years ago think about some of these sustainability initiatives, and the ones now that you're involved with this initiative, the way they think about it? Is there a noticeable difference there?
The biggest difference is just how accessible information is. Again, we have students. I mean, Google is now a verb. All I have to do is Google it. I can find the answer. A lot of our students learn on YouTube University. I mean, they have a question and they find a way. Here's where I can find the information. Again, that's where I go back to. We've moved from the industrial age to the information age. And sometimes I think one of the biggest things we can do in education is take a step back, maybe not focus quite so much on the detail. The students can look up the details. Again, what can they do with that information after they have it? Can they make the connections? When I was teaching environmental science, I talked about the four commoners' laws of ecology. One of them is everything is connected to everything else. And that is true in so many ways in our daily lives, in a societal level, but helping students see those connections and understanding that isn't just in nature, that's in economics, you name it. Everything is connected to everything else. And that's been part of the fun of working with students, is to help them see those connections.
That's awesome. I would imagine for someone like you in a role like this, working with students is probably your favorite part of the job. So yeah, like
Oh,
just
absolutely.
hearing the passion. Yeah,
Uh, and it's fun to watch students share what they're learning. One of the best ways to learn something is to teach it to somebody else. So if we provide those opportunities, again, if we can take the focus off of just what's a test score, there's a difference between memorizing and learning. And when I was in school, I could memorize pretty quick. But if I really didn't understand the material well enough to use it, what have I accomplished? So again, it's fun to give students some kind of a start, and let them take ideas and run with it. I was presenting, I gave a presentation to about 125, 150 students in a gym one day, 6th to 12th grade. I had one of our light boxes, and I could flip back and forth 60-watt equivalent bulbs, and I could go from an incandescent bulb to an LED light and show the difference in energy savings. And I made the comment that, okay, if there's this much energy savings in one light, imagine what the potential is in a gym like this. And I pointed up. Went on with the presentation. At the end of the presentation, one of the young ladies came up to me and she said 116. And I was kind of puzzled for a second. And I said, 116 what? And she pointed up and she said, we were talking earlier about those light bulbs and the energy savings. She said, there's 29 fixtures and there's 4 bulbs in each one. She literally did a lighting audit in her head while I was finishing the presentation. Uh, But that's where it's fun again. You can take a project, an idea like that, give the students the chance then to research, to ask some questions. Okay, what does it cost if we were to do one classroom? If we were to do an LED upgrade, what's the cost? What's the potential savings? Again, what's our return on investment? And then to make the lesson stick, give that student a chance to share what they're learning, whether that's again with another class, a community group, a presentation to the Board of Education. That's the engagement piece. Now those students are learning because it's their project, it's their idea. It wasn't me at the front of the classroom as a teacher saying, here's what I want you to do, and it's due next Friday.
You mentioned earlier, so like you said, you've spent over 30 years in the classroom prior to your time at Trane. I guess what is your? I'm sure you have an opinion on it. Like what is your opinion on the current teacher shortage? That was really a labor shortage, not just teachers, happening in K-12 education. How can schools and districts create that passion that you've really talked about and maybe address this shortage that's happening nationwide?
Well, I'll be honest. First of all, I am very concerned. Absolutely, there is a need for teachers in the classroom, and there's value in terms of the investments as a society. There's value in investing in education. Uh, there's nothing more powerful when we talk about workforce development and what it means for the economic future of a society than to have an educated workforce. And there's definitely opportunities for teachers today. Again, we need teachers in all subject areas, but especially in the areas of STEM. Uh, and I will say, having been in the classroom, it's rewarding to see the efforts. There's some things that money can't buy. And knowing that you've made a difference in the lives of your students is very rewarding. Now, we still need to make sure that being a teacher is that we can pay the bills and so forth. Teachers are expected to be professionals, and they are professionals. I mean, I had to have a 4-year degree. I earned a master's degree, had additional hours from relicensing. Our teachers are educated professionals, and we want to reward them and support them as we continue in that direction.
Well, we end every podcast with the same question. And we've asked this to everyone so far, but if you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about K-12 education, what would it be? And I know you're going to have an awesome answer because you've been involved in K-12 education for so long. So if I gave you the magic wand and all the amazing powers that came along with it, how would you use it?
That one is easy. Take the focus off the test. A test score is simply one way to measure what a student is learning, but there are so many other ways. And one of the best ways is, again, to give that student a chance to share what they're learning. I might be able to memorize something and fill in the blanks on a test, but can I actually use that information when I walk out the door? So again, if I had a magic wand that I could wave, I would say let's look at all the different ways that we can support students, get them involved, get them engaged, and let the learning be relevant to them, and then let them share what they're learning. I see so many opportunities in that area. I see growth in that area. I think we're doing more of that, and I hope that's something that we continue in the future.
Awesome. Well, how can people learn more about the BTU crew? And if the school wants to get involved with this, how can they learn more?
If they want to just search Trane and BTU Crew, there's a page available online. It'll pull up, or they can search my name, Dan Whisler, and Trane. And I am more than happy. Anybody reaches out to me, I'm happy to make connections. Again, we started here in Kansas. The program is growing nationally. We've actually added a second educator in residence, former science teacher, principal, gentleman by the name of Bill Nelson, that's helping nationally. So we're excited to have the opportunity to work with schools. Again, as an industry partner, our goal is to help come alongside. We want to be a partner in the classroom. It's not a curriculum that a school buys and we shake hands and say good luck. We want to continue an ongoing partnership. One of the things that's been nice, it's been a challenge with COVID and the remote learning, the hybrid situation, but it's also identified opportunities. Here recently, we have 3 different STEM high schools in Miami, Florida that I'm working with, and I was able to give classroom presentations by joining in remotely. so there's opportunities as an industry partner. We can work with schools anywhere and everywhere.
Absolutely. Yep. If there's one, silver lining of the pandemic, it's how much everyone has adapted these technologies and allowed you to do really cool things
Right.
like that. So, well, that's great. Well, Dan, we really appreciate you being on the podcast today, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.
You're welcome, Dan. Thank you for the invitation. We enjoyed visiting with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.